started writing Food for the Archons as a book of despair after watching my father die in 2013. During his transition, I experienced a series of paranormal and psychic events that left me feeling that I had either gone completely crazy or fell into humanity's darkest secret. I spent the next 5 years conducting extensive research, and I quickly learned that what I had experienced was real. My journey brought me to an understanding that showed me that despite the terrifying reality of an unseen predator, we as humans have a forgotten power. Just knowing this brings us tremendous hope in what once seemed a dark reality. I wrote this book for me in hopes of gaining a better understanding of our reality and relationship to it. But my hope is that you will find as much value in reading it as I did in writing it. I Am Human, Food for the Archons, humanity's psychic connections, simulated realities, parallel worlds, and the manipulation of mankind. It's available on Amazon.com and at sixcentsmedia.net and wherever books are sold. I'm Dennis Nappy II, reminding you to let your intuition be your guide. Thank you.
Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong in the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there.
So much spiritual energy is circulating through our environment right now, heavily charged with emotion. Some of that emotion seems to be euphoric. Some of it seems to feel a bit like devastation. How do we navigate that? Snappy the Second, friends, with Sixth Sense Media, and welcome back to the Seeker podcast. Following up on really last month's discussion too, around how do we deal with all of these incoming signals. I don't think the signals have stopped coming in, but I think we're feeling the impact of everything happening in the world, particularly in the United States. I want to talk a little bit about some of the things I'm seeing. I want to talk a little bit about spirituality, and how that can help us, not in a religious sense, not in a preachy sense, just in an everyday, practical sense in how we process things around us, how we navigate, and how can we get through without getting sucked in. And more importantly, how can we, in the face of challenge and hardship, continue to work towards our goals, to manifest the things we want, to build something better? That's the goal, right? Just to continue growing. How do we do that in challenging times? So I want to dive into a bunch of those things here. Before I do that, I'd like to give a quick commercial. At sixcentsmedia.net/Reiki. Cohort 2 for the Usui Reiki 1 course taught by me via Zoom is now open for registration. You're still eligible for the early discount, the early registration discount. As long as you register before the end of November, you will get that discount. The details are at sixcentsmedia.net/Reiki. Take a 6-week course with me and learn Reiki. The first cohort was amazing. It was a lot of fun. Students got a lot out of it. They learned a lot. And you walk away with an ability to really tap into your intuition. There's some exercises there to improve your intuition, to start to identify your intuitive and psychic strengths. And you learn some Reiki, how to give a self-care treatment and how to help others move towards healing. So it's great. Check it out. sixcentsmedia.net/Reiki. I'd love to have you as a student. All right, commercial over. Where to begin? It's hard. It's been hard not to pay attention to the media. It's been hard not to see what's going on. It's been hard not to hear our friends and our family and the emotions that some people have been having over um, we'll say the turn of events here in the United States lately. Today's November 16th, 2024. So in the last 2 weeks, a lot has happened for us, and it's been difficult for some people to process all of that. I came across a Facebook post that I put up there, I guess at the 2016 election when Trump won the presidency back then. And I promise this isn't coming from a place of ego. This is just really how I feel about things. My post along the lines was like, hey, now's your chance. Things suck. They're not what you want. But now you've got all this time to really focus on the issues that are important to you and invest in those issues and make a difference. And I want to echo that statement here is that we have so much power if we can learn to focus it, if we can learn to harness that internal power that we have. And if we can learn to collectively unite with our focus and our intention, we can move mountains. But how do we do that? How do we make a difference? How do we make a change? I think it's very important for us to continue to work to get to know ourselves. I'm still trying to figure that out. Who am I? What am I? How am I changing? How am I growing? What I understand about myself today might not be true tomorrow, might not be true in an hour. Sometimes things strike us and suddenly we're different. Our worldviews can change at the drop of a hat sometimes. So I want to share something that just this morning popped in my head. And it felt like one of those thoughts that was important for me to start shifting a perspective. And it was along the lines of in remote viewing, I think about and I work with people who can see the future. That's no secret. We've talked about it before. I've done it myself. Um, I'm not here to debate the authenticity of that. I'm constantly wondering, though, what does that tell us about our reality? What does that tell us about free will and choice? If I can see the future, that means the future has already occurred. Does that mean there's nothing I can do to change it? Well, I think there's ample evidence and testimony out there that shows that just because you see the future, number one, it's possible to change it because we see evidence of that for example, Ingo Swann's work. Um, but people who've had premonitions for long periods of time or short periods of time that this is going to happen, it's going to end your life, and they take action, right? The event happens, they act differently than their premonition told them, and they bypass the dangerous thing, and things change. Their life's on a new trajectory. Well, that's altering your entire future, right? So that gives me some understanding. Excuse me, I just kicked my camera here. It gives me some hope, idea, concepts of our ability to change the future, to reshape the future. Is that good? Is that bad? What purpose does that serve? Why are we able to do this? Should we be doing this? So many questions come up. I'm of the mindset if we have this ability to do it, I think there's a reason for it. And I suspect that the universe itself is making larger course corrections frequently. And those course corrections impact the present, they impact the past, and they impact the future. As humans in five sense reality, we are focused on I'm right here and I'm right now, and I can't do anything about the past, and I can only prepare for the future and try to impact the future. But I can't physically go to the future right now and impact it because I'm in the present. I know this is dizzying to think about, right? But remote viewing has really been such an amazing experience. And adding Reiki to it has brought a new dimension to it for me. So in remote viewing, we have the ability to go anywhere in space and time. Now, I'm sure there's probably limits somewhere. Someone, some universal laws or rules. There's probably places we can't go, things we can't see. But for the most part, we have this ability to traverse forwards and backwards in time, which is, I think, really the beginning of time travel for us. That's a different conversation, probably. If we have this ability to go forwards and backwards in time, now using Reiki, let's bring Reiki into this. I'm able to sit at my computer in Pennsylvania and work with somebody in Europe and impact their body and well, impact their energy, and that has a physiological effect on their body. So, this is things that have been debated, you know, multiple times by people much smarter than me. I've interviewed some remote viewers who have talked about it one way or the other. Do we have an ability to go forward or backwards in time and have an impact on someone or on some event? If so, what are the consequences of that impact? Does that change our current timeline? Or does that branch off and create a new timeline, a new dimension? I don't know. You know, I don't make these statements lightly because these are forces that we don't fully understand, and there is some danger involved in experimenting with those things. Where am I going with all this? I was driving today and I was thinking about some of the experiments I've seen and some of the data I've seen and some of the discussions I've had with remote viewers looking at the future particularly. And they were talking about some of the conversations I've had have been around presidential elections, but sometimes what they found is that it's very hard to predict who's going to win a presidential election. It's a challenge to predict who's going to win a football game. Sometimes, like the Super Bowl. It seems like when there are multiple variables that depending on the things that happen up to sometimes the last second, it could go in any direction. Or it can go in option A or option B, depending on, I think we're dealing with a game of probability here. However, there are some events near, some events very far out that are so probable we can see them now far into the future because nothing's going to change it unless something unexpected comes into play, in my opinion. The example that came to me today when this thought came to me was an asteroid. And the example of the asteroid was, let's say all of a sudden, because we track a lot, I said the space agencies track a lot of asteroids up there in the universe, or NEOs, near Earth objects. But we're blind in so many areas, and it's possible, and it has happened, where all of a sudden, out of nowhere, an asteroid comes and it's on a near collision course with Earth. Fortunately, in our modern history, while we've been alive, we have never been impacted. Now, we do have what looks like the Tunguska event over Russia, over Siberia. We have another event that happened over Russia, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago now, I can't remember it, but it didn't actually impact it, hit our atmosphere and exploded and it shattered all the windows and glass, and I forget what size radius. So these things do happen. But the example that I was thinking of was like a an end of the world type of asteroid. And it was like it comes out of nowhere and there's no time to react. And all of a sudden, where it's like you've got a week or 48 hours before this thing hits the planet, and there's absolutely nothing we can do in that amount of time to change it. And I started experimenting with that thought. And I think maybe part of our evolution right now is expanding the way in which we think, expanding the way in which we perceive reality. I don't know if this is considered fourth dimensional chess playing. I don't know, but it feels like it opens up new layers of possibility and probability and tool sets that we have when you start thinking about the ability to influence events forward and backward in time. Then I was thinking about the power of the collective. You know, if you've looked at my series, The Hive, I'm exploring the power of a collective hive mind. We could get the news that this asteroid's going to impact Earth. We have a week to live. There's nothing we can do. We know we can't build a rocket fast enough. We can't build a bomb quick enough. We can't evacuate the planet because we don't have that technology. All of these things. But what if we have two abilities, really? One is the ability to communicate with ourselves in the past. And that communication may be in the direct form of sending a signal to ourselves in the past that, hey, there's an asteroid coming, it's going to explode, and it's going to destroy the planet. Or maybe it's just a nudge in a technological direction. Maybe it's let's do an analysis of our current technological development and the path that we've been on and where we could go back in time to change us in a new direction that would, at this point in time, give us a tool set to navigate this problem. We might not be able to have this massive impact where we're going to circumvent the asteroid, but we may be able to develop solutions by influencing the past. Would we ever know that we did it? Maybe not. But I think about all the people who have been wrong over the years about horrible events that have been supposed to happen and have never happened. Maybe they did. Maybe they were supposed to happen. And somehow, collectively, enough of us were able to send signals where they needed to go to prevent it from happening. Maybe those were the influential variables that we don't fully understand yet. And I get it. I'm 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 way out there in Woo land right now. But maybe all we need is a collective of minds working together for a common cause to, in this present moment, give us a solution that we need to bring about change. We may the we may not have enough variability to prevent this asteroid from impacting Earth, but we may have enough creativity if collectively focused to survive it, to navigate it, which is enough of a change from a situation that seemed hopeless moments before. Are we using these tools appropriately in order to bring about the change that we want to see in the world? And why do I say that? At least here in the United States, but I think pretty much all over the planet. I mean, I think it's no secret we are going through a change. We are going through a transitional period in the world right now. And if you follow the work that we do at Future Forecasting Group, um, Dick and the crew go into great detail in explaining what that change is, what that agenda looks like, and where things are going. But on a spiritual level, on a personal level for us, these big things that we feel that we can't impact, what if we could? What power do we have as a collective, and how are we using and focusing that power? I want to share a news story that I came across this week that frustrated me. It frustrated me quite a bit, and I want to talk about it here on the show because I think it's relevant to our current condition, the way we handle things here on this planet right now. For those of you watching, I'm going to share my screen here, but I'll read the article as well. All right, so this is a story about a football player. Let's see here. All right, and now, sorry, I'm looking at New York Post article right now. It's got a video of Joe Biden playing, but that's not what this is about here. Forgive me. This is from the New York Post from November 11th, 2024. Now, we just celebrated Veterans Day earlier this week on Monday, November 11th. This story, Michael Strahan facing fierce backlash for how he stood during the national anthem. I'm going to read a little bit from this. Giants great and NFL on Fox analyst Michael Strahan is facing some backlash after the network's special Veterans Day broadcast from Naval Base San Diego. Controversy appears to stem from the moment the national anthem was playing and the camera showed the Fox crew standing lined up with their hands over their hearts, except for Strahan, who appeared to have his hands in front of him in an interlocked position. He appeared only briefly to be seen on Fox broadcasting during the national anthem as he stood next to Rob Gronkowski, but it was enough for some viewers to take issue with it a day before the country honors those who served in the military on Veterans Day Monday. I really I want to comment on this, and my initial reaction was really frustration. Not with this gentleman who chose not to put his hand over his heart. As a veteran, I'm not offended by that. What offends me, what scares me is how quickly everybody wants to get angry at this guy. We've fallen into a habit here of quickly judging people from only a snapshot of video, coming to our own conclusions and making our own opinions based on something that we see quickly that really has no impact on us, but can have a catastrophic impact on the target of that focus. Specifically, this gentleman here, Michael Strahan, the football player. Nobody knows why he didn't put his hand over his heart. He was well dressed. He stood there quietly, peacefully, and respectfully. He simply didn't put his hand over his heart. Now, on Veterans Day, he did put a post up acknowledging his father, who was a veteran of the 82nd Airborne. He was a military brat. He grew up on military bases. He has a lot of experience with the military. Whatever his opinions are, they are his based on his life experience. We don't have to agree with what people do. We don't have to like it. We can feel angered by certain things. But the second we start trying to crucify someone for having a different opinion, we're going down a dangerous road. We're so quick to say we don't want the government to interfere in our lives and tell us what to do because in America we're freedom and we have freedom of speech. Well, we're our own worst enemies sometimes as well because the second someone has a differing opinion, we want to crucify them. I remember when I left this country to go overseas as a soldier, I had that thought. I was young. I might not come home. And I wasn't going somewhere incredibly dangerous, but this was in a post 9/11 world that I was a target. There was a chance, but I don't want to make this sound more intense than it was, but I was nervous. And I remember getting on an airplane and the last step that I took. Remember, I had one foot on the stairwell because in the military you walk on the tarmac and you climb right up the steps into the plane. One foot on the airplane and one foot on the ground. I'm thinking I'm coming off of American soil right now. And it was a big moment for me. As I lifted my foot, I thought about a controversy I was hearing about in burning of the American flag. And, that was offensive to me. I didn't like people burning the American flag, but I was thinking about that so much. Like, what does my service mean? And what am I doing right now? Why am I doing this? America was founded on the principles of freedom, meaning people have the right to express themselves how they want, even if it's offensive by me. I remember saying to myself, like, I'm willing to go die right now. So somebody can sit here and burn the flag because they feel that's how they need to express themselves. We are allowed to say, F you, government. I hate you. I'm mad at you. Some people are very frustrated with things in the world, and burning the flag, I don't agree with it, or I don't like it, but it sends a message. And it's showing us that somebody is so angry right now that that is the greatest insult that they can throw. If we start trying to take away people's rights to do that, we're going down a dangerous road. And I feel that we are so quick again to want to enforce the rules when they protect our values and shut them down when they don't. And this gentleman here on Veterans Day, we don't know his reasoning, but right away the cancel movement starts jumping in. He should lose his job. He shouldn't get any more endorsements. So now we want to go after this guy's livelihood because he chose not to put his hand on his heart. He didn't even kneel like Copernic did. Is that Kaepernick? Copernic? And that was a whole other controversy. And again, you don't have to agree with it, but he has the right to make that stance in America. And I heard Rob Schneider recently, a stand-up comedian, he was talking about, he says, we need to protect free speech, not because I want to be able to say the things I want to say. We need to be able to protect the free speech of people who say things that I don't like. Where am I going with this? Why am I saying all this? I'm supposed to be talking about spirituality, but I think this is why we need to check in with ourselves. We have a great responsibility in trying to build the life we want, trying to have the things that we want. But at what cost? I'm reminded of one of my favorite quotes by Friedrich Nietzsche. And what it says here is that what he said was, beware that when fighting monsters, you yourself do not become a monster. For when you gaze long into the abyss gazes also into you. I think that's relevant right now, beyond the football player and the national anthem. We're at a point right now. You want to talk about spirituality. You want to talk about monsters. You want to talk about good versus evil. And necessarily think that's what's happening here, but I know people who do. And maybe that is what's happening. The ends do not justify the means. There are always consequences. And we become no better if we become the monster, if we fight. And I've been saying that for a long time on this podcast. If we're looking for ways to fight, in my opinion, we've already lost because we're contributing a type of energy that is just promoting conflict. And I'm not saying there will never be a situation where you have to fight, where you don't have to fight, whatever. I'm a huge fan of it's better to be a warrior in the garden than a gardener at war. But not every situation needs to be a fight. Come back to my asteroid example. It's going to impact the Earth. We have to destroy it. Maybe we don't. Maybe we need to find a way to burrow deep into the Earth to survive it. I don't know. This guy's standing there, not putting his hand on his heart. Do we need to fight that? Do we need to put our energy into the conflict of this man expressing his opinion? I want to look at a quote by Dr. King, which I keep in my heart a lot. I've dealt with a lot of conflict in my life. And there are times where the best way to meet that conflict is with aggression. I'm not going to pretend that there aren't. But I think when we're looking at things strategically, when we have that warning, we need to also remember that number one, we don't want to become monsters when we're fighting monsters, correct? Dr. King said, darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. And I think that's one of the most brilliant things I've ever seen. Because if somebody hates me and is coming at me out of hatred, and I hate them back and come back with them out of hatred, that hatred will always be there. In essence, it's love your enemy. I was listening to Joe McMonagle in an interview. I was listening to a podcast about a week ago, and he was talking about how after after the Cold War ended, after the Soviet Union fell, he had opportunities to travel to Russia and meet a bunch of Russian generals and Russian leaders and some of his psychic counterparts. Now, these are people years before they were working directly against each other to try to kill the other nation. And now they're together, they're sharing meals, they're sharing information, and they're realizing like we're just regular people. If I've heard many people say if it was up to the soldiers, we would never fight. We'd work it out because that hatred just perpetuates hatred. It's these signals that come in that we get caught up in, that we then tap into, and then we just get into that frequency of hatred, which leads us towards aggression and violence and sometimes war. Imagine if we were contagious on that signal of love and caring and compassion, even when something is really hard. That doesn't mean do nothing. It also doesn't mean we have to fight it. It might mean we need to do something different and be open to new possibilities. That's scary. That's change. You're standing out there in the wilderness alone, not sure where to go. But that doesn't mean we're out of options. That doesn't mean it's the end game. We are not there. We're presently in a situation where 50% roughly of the American people are upset, didn't get what they wanted. What's going to happen if that demographic continues to fight and to have a fight mentality? Violence, disruption, chaos, division. What are we going to achieve collectively? Or what will be the cost of achievement collectively going down that road? Is there a different way? Can love be used to drive out the hate? Can light be used to drive out the darkness? It's an unknown, but that's what darkness is. We can bring light to dark situations. I recently heard someone online saying, sometimes when you think you've been left alone in the darkness or you've been buried, you've actually been planted, and maybe is your time to grow right now. I know I come back to concepts that I mentioned off and on for years on this show, but I still value them and they help me get through times like this when I understand the heart math studies and how emotion is transmitted from us and contagious and spread. What are we putting out? If you're angry and filled with hatred, your heart is projecting an electromagnetic signal of hatred, which can influence other people around you. If you're putting out a calming, loving signal, you can influence other people around you by just existing. I want to go back to that meditation that I did a few podcasts back, if you remember. And I showed the sketch on the podcast where I clearly saw the earth and I saw these beams of light just coming down to the planet. And the impression I got was that there are some people here and their job is just to hold a particular frequency that brings about healing. Be one of those lights. We can change things. Reminded of the study, the Maharishi Effect. 1% of meditators can influence and has influenced, according to the research, things like crime in a given area. Collectively, we have power. Collectively, we're focused on the media. Collectively, we're angry. Take control. Take control of yourself. Do something positive. One thing a day. Start there. Or one thing a week if once a day is too much. Set a goal. Track it. Journal about it. And you'll find that your life will start to feel better. Throughout all of this, what I kept reminding myself was based on the nature of my job, and I'm fortunate to be in the position that I'm in, I have the ability every day to influence 500 people. The students and staff that I work with, I have the ability to interact with people in a way that's going to ruin their day or with people in a way that's going to make their day better. To me, that's power. It doesn't matter what else is going on in the world because in that bubble that I'm in, I'm spreading something positive. I'm just one person. I'm not changing the world by myself. But what happens when other communities start to do the same thing? And this is why I said this ties in, this is spiritual to me. Spirituality is not just sitting down in meditation. It's not just praying. It's not just focusing on these esoteric concepts. Spirituality is also how do we apply the things that we learn in our spiritual journey in our everyday life? How do we interact with other people? How do we interact with the environment and the world around us? That's everyday spirituality. I love the moments where I can be in an altered state of consciousness and have an experience where I can do a remote viewing session and gather awesome data. But spirituality is in everything. I love that scene in the movie Karate Kid, the Jackie Chan version. Pick up the jacket, put down the jacket, pick up the jacket, and then he starts to teach him. He realizes by hanging up the jacket, he's learning kung fu. And Mr. Han, played by Jackie Chan, is telling him, Kung Fu is in everything. It lives in everything. And we show it in how we treat people, in how we pick up our jacket. It's about the respect that you're showing. And I think about that. I think it's a similar concept to Reiki, to this spiritual energy, to chi, to prana, to life force, to love, to the Holy Spirit, whatever you want to call it. It's in everything, which makes everything we do a spiritual encounter, a spiritual possibility. And that understanding, that perspective fills me with hope despite all the scary things that are going on right now. Scary things are always going to happen. Transitions are always going to happen. But maybe this is the test of, are we evolved enough to use these new tools that are being presented to us? Can we navigate? Can we rise to the challenge and not get sucked into the negativity and change the rules of the game? I like to think we can. And I'm going to leave us with that, my friends. But I do believe that we can navigate this in a way that feels much more positive and enriching for all of us. And I hope you can too. Which is going to draw this podcast to a close for me. I appreciate you, all of you listening, for taking the time to continuing to support the work that I do here. You can find more of the work that I do at sixsensemedia.net. Don't forget to sign up for my Reiki course starting in January 2025, or book a Reiki session with me as well. I'd love to connect with you and work with you. And lastly, check out my books available at sixsensemedia.net as well. I'm Dennis Nappy II. This has been another episode of the Seeker Podcast. Remember to never stop questioning, keep an open mind, let your intuition be your guide. Thank you.
I said, empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow, or it can crash. Be water, my friend, be water, my friend. Be water, my friend, my friend. Be water, my friend, my friend.